Look at this graph.
This is the Team Objection Podcast for October 12th, 2021, episode 501, which doesn't quite have the same magic to it, but it's okay. We have a full panel again. We've got some interesting topics to cover, and we're going to get back to business as usual.
They're all right over there. I can't point well enough on my small screen.
That's why I'm dressed like a hobo again. It's because back to business as usual.
A Hyrule hobo.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just t-shirts and glasses from here on out.
Man, that's too bad. Like you know, I had some class for like
I know.
hot.
I know. And look what happened. I lost in both competitions. Class doesn't buy skill.
You kind of got your ass kicked.
Yeah, I know. I'm aware. I'm still recovering.
I mean, really, if you want to count the scores again, there was a wide gap in between what your score was.
Yeah, that's definitely what I was referring to. I was saying my ass was handed to me.
To plot it on a number line.
It was not close, yes.
You have to handle 99 more shows of things like this before you get a chance to beat him again.
Yeah, well, to be fair, we will probably do another competition before 600.
Mm-hmm. Maybe not one of that scale, but there will be other little games and stuff.
Yeah. We usually do it every
Yeah, but
so
on
often.
that scale, you have to wait 99 shows.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Look, David's just lucky I showered today. That's I can look like a hobo, I'm dressed like a hobo, whatever, but I showered. And that's not a thing that happens every day.
I think the other three of you in that room are glad he showered because you have to smell him, and I don't. So
I mean, I have a lot of cologne. I can mask it.
One other thing that's different about this episode, at least for the people watching on YouTube, is that I lowered the latency. There's like a difficult to find setting so that we actually do not need to have so much delay. So that'll be nice in the future. It's a shame I didn't read about this before the last episode, but whatever, it worked. Everything worked. So that's
pretty
nice.
Cool. Cody didn't clearly get the memo because he is dressed up for this week.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I should celebrate after the fact now.
Yeah, there you go. The start of a new era. Fans might be thinking, wow, they're talking about what they're dressed in a lot. But this live thing is like it's a new thing. So getting to talk about what we're wearing, video is kind of new. I guess it's not really that new, but it's kind of new.
Did you dress up when there was no video? Just for yourself?
No, I was just pretty much the same. I can't think I ever did.
Yeah, I don't think I've looked slightly nicer. I definitely have I think more about showering the day of. I shower most days, but I don't really skip the day of the show anymore because of video, so I don't want to have shitty looking hair. That's about the only change. Because if it was all audio, whatever, nobody knows. But that's about it. I wear the same stuff.
Well, I also used to transmit out of a closet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I can't do on video anymore, but I used to do on not video. I was barricaded in my closet.
Which is kind of funny because there was also a time where you were in our closet in the same house as me, so that we wouldn't have echo, but you might as well not have been here.
Yeah.
You could have been in Chicago or New Zealand or whatever.
Even looking at something, it wasn't just being alone around me, but looking at other people. It was too much. I couldn't focus on looking at you and talking on the mic. So I've come a long way.
He's become a professional, finally.
I'm a professional. It's finally. It only took 600 episodes.
We did it.
500.
So we have two quick topics to get to, and then our review of Ted Lasso Season 2 was just completed last week. A couple reasons for that. Number one, it was to make sure everybody had time to get here because Cody was at work, so we wanted to make sure you didn't miss out on the biggest topic. And also because that way, if you don't want to have spoilers, you can tune in for the first part and then bail if for some reason you haven't been keeping up on it. That's fair game too. We'll obviously warn you when we're about to talk about it because we're going to talk about some pretty major spoilers, I think. I think the biggest topic is going to be what happened in the finale. So just be warned when we get there. If you don't want spoilers for Ted Lasso Season 2, you're going to have to turn it off. But we're not getting there yet. We're starting with some of the biggest news from last week. There were a couple topics I mentioned in episode 500 that we did not have time to get to. You'll notice we went a clean 2 hours without talking about them at all. And one of those was some of the biggest gaming news from last week, which was that the final Smash Brothers character was announced for Smash Brothers Ultimate, the 89th character in the game after 3.5 years since Ultimate's release. And although this was leaked a little bit in advance, it was Sora from Kingdom Hearts. And I want people to understand, a lot went into this, okay? We're going to get into why in a second. But before Sean and I talk about it, because we're obviously Kingdom Hearts fans, I want your guys' impression just of what that news means on whatever level it means anything to you, even if that's nothing.
My thought is I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner, to be honest. Kingdom Hearts came out in 2001, 2002, somewhere around there.
Thereabouts.
And there's been, this is the third Smash game, I think, that's come out since then. GameCube, Wii, and then Switch. So I figure this is the third iteration that's come out since then. I'm surprised that it hasn't happened sooner.
Fair.
I'd probably say the exact same thing. I mean, I think Kingdom Hearts 2 is one of the first games of that type that I ever even really played through. And just like not really knowing anything about that whole universe until playing that. Having kind of gathered all that up now, like kind of like Dave said, just they really took that long to kind of get it
noobs.
in. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell
Chris,
you.
I apologize for you, Chris, for even throwing it to them and thinking they'd have anything intelligent at all to say about this.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, but I did it on purpose because I'm actually going to make a point out of this. So
Well,
go
good.
ahead.
So, well, the only... Okay, you know what, Chris? Make your point first.
Okay.
Make it first.
All the Smash reveals have been pretty solid. The trailers are usually quite good. There's a big reveal moment in them, so everybody gets super excited. And even just the mystery of who was going to be in it over these months and months in between characters was enough to get people excited. Sora is a nice pick because he's got this really common appeal. A lot of people know him. Maybe not so much true for like a Min Min from ARMS, who, is a fine inclusion, I guess. There's some decent representation there, and she plays a lot different than anybody else in the cast. But nobody's like, oh my god, Min Min's in the game. Like, Why I brought the casual point up is you guys are sort of right on the timing. When they did a poll back in the Wii U version of this game on what character was the most requested, the number one answer was Sora. But they didn't announce that at the time because here's why. All the Kingdom Hearts characters are owned by Disney.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what working with Disney is like? Fucking nightmare. So I don't think it took all of those 6 years since that poll's results came in to make this happen. I would imagine they've had this lined up for at least a little while, maybe a few months, maybe longer. But the number of things it took to get this to happen, I think, has gone underappreciated by people, except those who really understand the loop of this. It's not a slight on you guys. It's just to bring up the same point of like, for people who don't understand what went into this, it seems like, oh, cool, Sora's in Smash. It's like, this represents so much work, and I'm imagining the logistics of like the legal nightmares of it because, man, it was tough.
That's true. I always kind of thought he was Square Enix, to be honest, that licensed Disney, not the other way around. So you're right. Good call.
Which is a reasonable thing to think. Again, if you're not super in the loop on it, even I didn't realize until a couple of years ago. It's like, oh man, that's going to make those crossovers really complicated then because, oh no.
I don't think I meant like to have it like ignoring with all the work that went into it. It's just like,
yeah,
oh yeah, that's a video game character that makes sense to eventually be in there in some way.
You don't have to backpedal, Cody.
No, I'm just saying.
Not listening to this podcast. Well, maybe they are actually. Maybe continue. I that was kind of my point though. Is the timing and like the work and everything, they're like mutually exclusive kind of. Like it's not just like a given that all of our favorite characters from all of video gaming get to be in Smash Brothers. There's a whole thing to it. So the fact that he's in there at all, I'm just like, I think it's a pretty big deal. And I'm excited in a way where I am playing Smash Brothers for the first time again in probably years now. It's actually, Sora's made me so excited. I'm getting other DLC characters to play through their little bundles and other things. So this is a pretty big deal for me, even though it's going to amount to not a whole lot. I'm probably going to play his little event-specific stuff. I'm going to do his storyline. It's probably going to come out to like 5 hours of Sora-specific gameplay outside of any time we do like multiplayer, which doesn't happen all the time. So it doesn't mean a lot, but it means a lot.
I can agree with that. I think it's cool. And I wish there was a little bit more uniqueness to it, I guess, other than the little bit that is unique to each character. Because while it's fun, like, hey, I like to play as Sora, there's also, for me, Smash Bros. Has always been kind of like, hey, I'll play this for a little bit. And I've run out of different things to do on it. So it's kind of like repetitive almost, unless you're playing against other people. And lately, the only person I played Smash Bros. Against is my 5-year-old son. So he's pretty good.
He wrecks your shit. Yeah, I actually agree with you, Dave. I'm like, I wish that, and not just the DLC. I wish in the main game there was a little more to do that was specific to that was specific to the characters. So you can do the adventure mode where you can choose a bunch of different characters. There's some event specific stuff, but there's not like a storyline that like makes it really fun. And I know that would be super hard, and that's just not what the game is. But it's less exciting for me because of that.
Even the adventure mode in this most recent Smash Bros. On Switch is just kind of like, hey, all the characters got taken over by this evil force. Go free them. Okay, there's like 90 of them, so go free them all, baby.
Yeah, there's a lot. The only other point I wanted to make on this was sort of a tangent on what Doug mentioned in the chat, which is, I don't think the two of you saw the trailer. Sean and I obviously did. The only sign that this was a Disney character is the little Mickey Mouse symbol on the end of the keychain. That's it. They had a little bit of clips from the games as like an introduction to Sora, but Sora's inclusion in Smash has no Disney in it whatsoever. So it took all this work just to get base level Sora in the game. There's no Donald and Goofy who are with him everywhere. There's no other Disney characters he encountered along the way. They're not in the world, the stage that he's on. They're not in the trailer. Even the song from the trailer, the orchestral version of Simple and Clean, is not actually in the game because that also is owned by Disney. So they got to use it for the trailer, but it cannot appear in the game. Why does all that matter to me? Because I think it shows how much content is affected by context.
Sure.
We talked about like the disc golf throw-in with James Conrad. And on the surface, it shows up as like a highlight that looks cool and people are excited. If you know what goes into it behind the scenes, all of a sudden there's just so much more value to it. It's the same thing with like why we're so connected to the Suns. We have that deep level of care and we understand what it's taken to get to this point, why it's so important that we're here now. So you saw this really wide spray of emotions on this, more than I think a lot of the past trailer. There were some people like breaking down in tears at the news because they've wanted him in the game for so long and they play it a ton. And other people were like, okay, cool, click. And I've never seen that to this level with a video game as much as I have with like sports. But it's what reminded me of that same kind of like, the more invested you are, the more the payoff is.
So are they going to have like Roxas and Riku as like trophies or like those spirits or whatever they call them?
They're
like...
spirits, and they're also in the background of the second part of the stage.
Okay.
I'm assuming no King Mickey comes in as your final smash. That's not going to happen.
The final smash was very generic. And some people are like, oh, that's kind of a bummer, or maybe they could have gotten more songs. And I'm like, I understand where you're coming from, but it's like, again, I don't even want to know the negotiations it took to even get us here, which took 6 years and whatever back and forth to do it.
If Roxas wasn't in the game, I would be jumping off a bridge right now. That's all. Roxas, Xion, that's it. That's my two demands. So I don't know. If anybody knows Xion, write in the chat if you know.
Pretty sure a couple people will.
Okay.
I'd say I never really realized until recently that all the characters were DLC. I didn't realize that Nintendo had gone down that path. So when my son actually spent his own allowance money to buy Smash Brothers, and I was like, well, I wouldn't mind playing as Joker. And I'm like, oh, that costs extra money. I didn't really expect that. And as Sean mentioned before, there's not a lot of unique thing. I never bought it because I was just like, I don't want to spend extra money on a quick little thing. I don't know.
Yeah, so. I was going to go with what part of DLC made you think it was going to be free. But you know what? I agree with you. We had like an overlap. And it doesn't happen a lot. So I'm going to honor the overlap and I'm going to say, I agree. I got the Joker DLC and it was fun doing the couple of spirit side things. I played it for probably 30 minutes and I basically exhausted the Joker content. It was fun. And if that's worth $6 to you, I would say it probably was to me. Now to have him for multiplayer and to do his stuff, but it's why I'm not super interested in like the season passes. Mm-hmm. It's like you get all these characters. I'm like, yeah, but I don't care very much.
Kind of in the same boat.
I like the model they went with. It was smart to extend the game's lifespan by doing these DLC reveals, and they kept the game relevant for almost 4 years just on the backs of that. I mean, it would have been fine anyways. It would have been playable in tournaments. It would have had a lifespan to it, but it was fresh. And again, there was this excitement that surrounded this every time, even though it was just one character joining a massive cast. So it wasn't like it was going to change a ton, but it was good of them to do it that way because now Sakurai, the guy who basically helms all this, can take a long break. He's deserved it because he's basically worked on Smash for the last like 10, 15 years. Maybe he'll go back and make another Kirby game or something. Who the hell knows? But a fitting ending. The people that were like, oh, I want Waluigi. Well, first of all, you can fuck off. And second of all, like, they were never going to end on Waluigi. It had to be... There was all this speculation about the last pick, and it's like, it has to be Sora or Master Chief. Those are the only two big enough characters that would be a fitting finale for this. And Sakurai has always delivered on these types of promises because he cares a lot what people think.
What's cool is Sakurai is actually like, you talk about the work and all the game development and all the negotiations and all that is huge. He's also like a master at every character because I'm pretty sure it's him that runs like that. Here's what this character can do. And he just does all these crazy stunts and like, here's an advanced move for how Sora can get back to the ledge. And I'm like, man, that's a ton of respect. He's like mastered every character in the game on top of everything else that he's built.
Yeah, and then he fights level 9 characters in the in most of the reveals. So, yeah, props to him. Good closure. Great finish to a great game. How much does it matter in the grand scheme of things? I don't know, but it's cool. Just seeing, I had a picture queued up. We didn't end up having the side layout because we have 4 people, but I had the very end of the actual trailer is Sora just shaking hands with Mario. And I was like, man, even that kind of hit on an emotional level. Because again, you just have to understand what it took. And like people who worked on Kingdom Hearts cited Mario 64 as being a huge influence. So it all just comes like full circle. That's neat to me. That kind of stuff, that gets to me, you know? The only other thing I want to talk about as far as the second topic on the screen, I don't want to go into this a ton, but I figured since some viewers were also following along with it, why not? I did my second PDGA sanctioned disc golf tournament 2 weekends ago now and moved up a tier. So I'm in the second highest recreational level or amateur level and finished second. There's not a huge story to it. I've just figured I'd bring it up on the show because I mentioned I would. And I guess it shows that I still have got a little bit of ways to go on self-esteem because even though I'm super proud of myself, I feel bad talking about it. So got some things to work on there.
Cody thinks you should also feel bad talking about it.
I don't, actually. In fact, it makes me feel good when I go out and try this damn sport and I suck at it. Then when Chris is killing all of us, well, you know, he's pretty good.
I mean,
so
what's the big deal
at that point?
Yeah.
So it actually it should boost his self-esteem and it boosts my own the better he does. So again, it's all about me.
Wow, that's really nice.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to compete against, my friends in things like, compete with Sean in basketball or with Chris with bowling back in the day. That was a big thing Chris and I competed on a lot. And I usually got the upper hand on bowling. Chris would get the upper hand on golf and stuff. But disc golf, I don't stand a chance in hell, pretty much. So Chris got me pretty good on this one.
Yeah, I even beat Dave in disc golf. Like
It's
Dave,
true.
like you're not even close to Chris. You haven't even entered the stratosphere on him yet.
Nope.
You can't even beat me, and I suck.
I can't do anything but throw at this like slanted angle. So
it reminds you of like a samurai movie or something where it's like, yeah, you can't even fight that guy yet. You're not even on his level. You have to get through me first.
Yeah,
you can strike me down, then you can go up to the palace.
I'm the mini boss.
I do enjoy that you managed to find a way to bring up beating Dave in something.
Yeah,
after being thrashed and discussing it earlier.
Yeah, actually, I felt bad. We played basketball like somewhat regularly, and I'm like talking trash to Dave because that's what I do. And Dave was like, "Yeah, like I suck." Or he said something along the lines of like, it made it no fun for me to talk trash any longer.
What a great way to get in your head.
Yeah, and then I just felt bad. It's like,
Dave went through a slump. Like we were doing some recorded sessions and stuff, and he didn't win a game for like 11 or 12 games of 21. Like I won 3, and I fucking suck at 21. I was like, man, he was right in the mix on quite a few of them, and just couldn't close it out, or had a weird break or something. It wasn't like he's bad now, but even I was like, man, this has been weird.
I started being like, good job, Dave. You played well today. And
he got you to pity him?
Mm-hmm.
I did.
I mean, because he wasn't like playing bad, but it's like, I'm going to get you on. I'm going to get you on the next one and make you regret you ever came out and played. He was like, yeah, like I suck now. And, I'm too rusty. And it's like, man.
Ruining your fun is pretty great, though.
I broke his brain.
Yeah, you really did. It stuck with me. I don't know if you know that, but I'm revealing it now. I dream about it sometimes. No, not really. But
when we played over the summer, it was better. So
yeah, definitely. When we played in Phoenix, we got to play like 4 or 5. Oh, Cody was there. He knows because we kept abandoning him in the house. But we got to play a lot. That was awesome.
I want to point out Doug Fiala in the chat. Yes, I will gladly bowl. Although I know Nick and you are better than I am. I've heard Nick is phenomenal at bowling, but I will still bowl with you.
He's in a regular league and stuff.
He's like a pro.
He's probably 200 plus on average, which Dave can hit 200. How many times have you done that? A few?
4 or 5, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think I have once. He was always a better bowler than I was. I'm pretty consistent. I'm usually right around 140, 150. Dave was sometimes 100, sometimes 200, but he was a better bowler than I was.
Yeah, Doug, I don't think we want to bowl with you either. Like, I think you and Nick are both like so much better than us.
You'll just end up saying like, "Yeah, it's fine. You're better than me. I'm sad."
You know, exactly. Doug plays disc golf and doesn't like win every time, so maybe I should do something that Doug likes too.
So you can get your ass kicked.
Yeah, and Michaela said that she believes in you, Dave. So it was really nice of her to lie to you like that.
Very nice. I appreciate the sentiment. It is a lie. It's okay, and I've felt that in my heart. It's okay.
Excellent.
That's really nice. I'm so glad we came here.
So that's about it for that. I could go into all the details on it, but it feels like I'm just gushing or whatever, and I don't think it's that interesting. So.
Hey, no, I was interesting. I mean, I can't wait till you actually win and move up another level and like get into these real professional events of like where you're actually winning money. That'd be pretty sweet.
I want you to get on the front of that magazine that I saw downstairs where there's like, it looks like a Christmas card cover. I don't know who designed this, but it's like the guy about to throw and then his face, I think from the same pose, is superimposed in the background. It's hideous, but very cool, I'm sure, for him. So I want you to be on the cover, Chris.
I'm working towards it. You know, I've already come a lot further in basically 4 months than I thought I would. I mean, I played a decent amount really going through the pandemic, but nothing seriously until I guess basically June. So to go this quick, I mean, who knows? I don't know how good I can be. I went into this tournament saying I would never have a chance of winning, and I actually had a putt on 18 that would have tied. Now, the guy who won could have made his own putt on 18. He laid it up because he knew he was ahead by 1. So he could have also made a birdie and still won. But after being tied for 7th after day 1, to go out and shoot a bogey-free 3 under on a 27-hole course, I mean, I exceeded even my wildest expectations. So we'll see. I don't know what the future holds. I'm mostly just putting this out there more to hold myself accountable than anything else, because I want to keep pushing. I don't want to just settle for being good. So
I get that.
That's the end of that part of the discussion. Why don't we get to the main event? Because I think there's going to be some interesting opinions about this, the season as a whole and the finale in particular. Again, as a final warning, this is your last chance to bail out if you don't want Ted Lasso Season 2 spoilers. So, having watched a couple people jump out of the airplane and open their parachutes.
We did lose one in chat.
How about Nate? Huh? Well, why don't we just start there, because it seems like the most natural point at which to start.
I love it. I gotta say, like, I hate him, but that's clearly the point. That's what they were building to for a long time. It's a little sad because he was a character that you rooted for. You were glad to see he got his chance. But I love it when bad characters redeem themselves, and I love Fall from Graces too. Man, sign me up. So I have a gripe about it, but overall, I like the direction that they're going in, and I think it's really cool.
You needed a new villain. I mean, they had to find one from somewhere, and I prefer them doing it from someone they've already established, rather than popping up new random character and, oh, this guy is the bad person for this season. I like them going within the cast they already had and challenging themselves to write it in that direction. I mean, the same thing, like you said, Sean, just it's a bummer to see a character you cheered for early on have that. But I mean, they started planting the seeds on it really, really early on. And I was like, all right, if that's the direction you're going to go, I can go with that. I really was, interested to see where it was going to lead.
It's not even like a replacement villain. It's like a league of villains now because they joined together.
Yeah, Rupert's in the mix too.
Yeah.
Yep. I appreciate the fact that his reasoning for being so pissed off, to me at least, was flawed. His reasoning was that Ted abandoned him, while completely not acknowledging the demons that Ted was facing throughout the season, because I can see how somebody who grew up bullied, not thought of as someone important, all of a sudden felt important because he made good decisions, he worked hard, someone recognized him, gave him a chance, and all of a sudden that person is dealing with their own thing and can't put their effort and time into continuing to foster this newfound feeling of confidence that Nate never had before. Even though Ted didn't abandon him and still supported him fully, did things like keeping the picture on his at home instead of on his desk, which Nate didn't understand or realize. But his reasonings were completely flawed and wrong, but they were still very real to Nate, which I thought was something that was difficult to understand at first, but when you kind of dug into it more, it was completely understandable.
Well, I thought they did a good job of Ted's not really aware of what's going on with Nate for a lot of that season. I mean, Coach Beard is obviously the one who kind of checks in and is aware of it, but you don't really ever see those conversations. And is that Ted being distracted by everything he's going on with his own, life and self? But just the way they wrote that to where you can, well, Nate's logic is flawed, like you said. From the viewer's perspective, like Ted didn't know any of this was happening. I guess maybe you start realizing he's dressing weird and his hair's gray and all those type of things and stuff's going on. But I just thought they directed that in a way where you're like, you can kind of listen and be like, all right, you're not completely off base. Because if you're getting completely off base, I'm not really interested in that person who's just full of shit. Like, it doesn't really interest me. So I'm like, even if I don't agree with it, like, his rambling speech there at the end, at least I feel like, okay, when I take a look back at it, I can see where that kind of was coming from. And he wasn't necessarily abandoned, but he wasn't a focal point really in that way. And I know obviously, when Roy comes onto the staff, I think that was obviously a big step too, is that they kind of subtly hinted at that was, where Ted already replacing Nate in that way.
Because he was also he was another character with football acumen, which, I mean, Beard has obviously done his reading. He's clearly got at least a good understanding. Maybe not a thorough one, and he's never played to our knowledge, but at least he's there to kind of help. The idea of Nate stepping in at the end of season 1 was like, well, he obviously has a perspective that nobody else does. Well, Roy Kent has that perspective more so, especially having played. He can identify with the players in a different way. So I agree overall. I think the one takeaway I had from it was like, I thought it split the difference really well between somebody who's completely unhinged, and their reasoning doesn't make any sense as a Slack notification goes off on stream, and then somebody whose justifications make total sense. Because I'm actually almost getting a little bit tired of going through media in which you just kind of look at both sides and you go, well, they both have a good point. I don't know where they fall on it. Maybe that's because the world has gotten too both sidesy for my liking. I'm not sure. But I kind of like that you look at Nate and you go, okay, I can kind of see where he would get this impression, but he's wrong. And they've laid the seeds to show that he's wrong. And that's maybe going to be part of his redemption arc. Because now they can go back in season 3 if they are going to redeem him and go, well, Ted does have the photo still up, and he does care, but he was going through his own stuff, and he showed affection in different ways. And I think they've done a good job with that stuff. I thought the last 3 episodes, the finale especially, did a good job of salvaging what I thought was otherwise an only halfway decent season.
Yeah. So I want to definitely get on there. To me, the Nate thing. So conceptually, I love it. It had a little bit of like Daenerys syndrome to me though, where I didn't know, and maybe I'm missing something. We watched it over the course of the duration of however long, and maybe I missed some things. But I remember watching the finale, and he's yelling at Ted, which is great. Like, what an emotionally charged scene. Except that everything he's saying, I'm like, where is this coming from? That you felt neglected. Like, there were no seeds that I saw that were really planted, so it didn't feel as earned to me. You can say the thing about, he brought on Roy, and that could have been a thing. But, like, we weren't shown that. Were we ever shown? And maybe we were. But, like, the photo where he's like, you haven't even hung that up yet. Did that come up in the Christmas episode where Ted, like, didn't put it up? Or, like, was that a thing?
I think there was one thing I think that's kind of started the whole path, and then everything expanded upon it. There was one episode earlier in the season where a player needed to be addressed. And honestly, I wish I remembered which player it was. Maybe it was Jamie. And Nate goes, and then Ted said basically, all right, we got to put the big dogs in this. And Nate said, all right, I'll do it. And Ted laughs at him. And I think, stupid as it is, that started the chain of events, because it went from Ted believing in Nate, trusting him and everything, and then all of a sudden not looking at him as an equal to Beard, to Roy, to other players. And then other things came down. It was interesting, I think, the fact of Roy coming on, hurting his confidence. That's how much Nate is in his own head, because the first or second match that Roy was a coach, Nate had the strategy that worked, the park the bus strategy that ended up working. Nate is clearly qualified in his ideas, but in his own head, he's still not qualified. He's still so insecure that he will take any slight out there as an attack on him.
Well, they added that in with him kissing Keeley in that at the end of the season, where it's like Roy just forgiving him and not wanting to beat his ass. Yeah. He was like, I'm not a threat at all, so you don't even take me seriously, which is a weird backwards way of like wanting to get your ass kicked for something you did wrong, but it still ends up being a slight. The other thing I think I remember back from earlier in the season was when he didn't get a coffee machine. As kind of goofy as it was, they didn't see him as equal or whatever as part of the team, that he didn't get one of the presents or whatever. And I know that kind of took that step forward too, of like being slighted and not being cared for, whatever it may be. I do agree with Sean though. Like there is an absence of the way they kind of built Nate being neglected in a way was just not having the same attention that they had in the first season.
Yes.
And that's not really a choice of making someone like have a fall from grace, other than you just didn't show the over the top, like, oh, Nate is so great type of stuff, which naturally you're not going to have that every single season of a show for a character. It would get old really quickly if that was the focus on him over and over again.
I was reading something that I think confirmed what I thought. I might even mention this to you, Sean.
You did, and I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, that they did not have a scene with only Nate and Ted in it the entire season until that one that was so emotionally charged in the finale, which is a kind of like clever and subtle way to go about it. But I do kind of agree with the two of you in the sense that it is difficult. I don't know where I fall on this. It's hard because you don't want to just hit people over the head with it, like him just getting more and more discontent.
Yeah.
So, and there's plenty of signs that he's already kind of falling down this path, but it does feel like they could have done more to earn those specific moments, because you're like, well, wait, you think Ted got all the credit for your parking the bus strategy? We just saw in the episode, you got all the credit.
On Twitter.
You were the Wonder Kid. It was a whole arc.
Yeah.
So like those do kind of make this tonally dissonant in a way that I think is a little bit undermining to the work the season did.
And what it is they're telling us, not showing us. That, so Nate's coming in and saying, here's all the things you didn't, here's how I feel, but we're not really seeing that. They're not connecting the dots for us in an adequate level, I would say. And so to me, that is a symptom of this entire season. So often we, the conclusions to a lot of the arcs, I think we've talked about this before, it just didn't really feel super earned for me. And I would say outside of the last 3 episodes, starting with the funeral and pretty much then on, which I thought was really strong and it had a great end. It was really, really good end. But Dave brought this up earlier. Like, I'm going to wait for my judgment until the season's over. And I would say, even though it ended well, I still think the season overall was mediocre because the journey to get here was pretty ho-hum until the end, where like I guess they brought the varsity riding team back. Like they went on vacation, they had the JV team doing like the middle episodes, and then they came back and had a really strong finish.
I think even one scene, especially after Roy gets hired, where Nate approaches being like kind of wanting to talk to Ted about his position on the staff or whatever, and if Ted's just distracted of like having to get to his appointment with Dr. Sharon, like even something simple as that would at least have like kind of keyed that in that like, okay, he wasn't paying attention to Nate's concerns. Because it's like, how many times did Nate voice his concerns? You're right. We gonna see it visually with the cues of how he stares at Roy, or his little transformation into Jose Moreno, basically. Like there's a couple cues there, but you really there really isn't anything else that you really. I mean, they're relying on you as a viewer to really be paying and just staring at Nate the whole time to see how he reacts to stuff, and you don't really have that until later on in the season where you're like, oh yeah, he's starting to lose it.
Yeah.
Well,
when he screams at his replacement in the locker room, and it's like, oh yeah, he is being a total dick now.
I mean, the whole thing comes down to insecurity and something that different and I think that was kind of the theme of the season in a way, was insecurity and how different people were with that. Roy was insecure the whole season. I mean, both his relationship with Keeley, he was insecure about the fact that she was as strong, as independent as she was, and that he had to change who he was from being a professional football player to a commentator and then a coach. Nate was so insecure with so much of his things, in the sense that he'd be scrolling through Twitter, seeing all these people praising him, calling him the Wonder Kid, which was a speaking gaffe on his part, but he should have embraced as, yeah, I know it's Wonder Kid, but I screwed up, whatever. But instead he'd focus on the bad things people said, which is, again, someone who was not paid attention to, then thrust into the spotlight and didn't know how to handle it because he's insecure about himself. There's so many things that showed insecurity. Beard with not being able to break off a clearly toxic relationship. Insecurity. There's terrible. Just so much. I think that would be the theme of the whole season, of being insecure with yourself.
Well, so Michaela brings up like the excess of filler. And I would agree with that. And I would say even episodes that didn't have to be filler. The Beard episode could have been hugely insightful into who he was as a character. And I don't think was. I think it achieved nothing other than being a sort of whimsical hour of television. Like, I didn't hate the experience, but when it was over, I was like, "What? Why? Why did we do that?"
No, I mean, that episode frustrated me more than anything because, like, I just got to see Jamie's dad get punched out, and then he gets to go and beat Beard's ass in the episode. I'm like, wait, so, like, Jamie's dad wins out of that? You made this guy a huge villain, and then, like, next time you see him, he's just beating somebody up. I'm like, I didn't really like it at all.
Yeah, I think both those episodes did not help this season whatsoever, especially being placed in the middle of it on a week-to-week basis. We kind of talked about this before, but did the season no favors overall. And I would even argue that the greatest success of season 1 for me, and we talked about this in our review of season 1, was that I actually really liked that the show didn't waste time on certain arcs and resolved them more quickly. The difference with season 2 is that they didn't resolve so many arcs so quickly. Sometimes they were just kind of pushed aside. And maybe they'll come back in season 3, I don't know, but we're not reviewing season 3 right now. So the sponsor on the uniform thing is one of the prime examples for me where it was like, that seemed like it was building to something big, and like Sam's role in it especially, as with him as a character, and not only was it forgotten, but the Christmas episode was right after it. So the momentum it had was gone, and then you came back and it still wasn't addressed in the non-filler episode, and you're like, well, wait a minute. And I know like the banter thing came up later. They had a scene where they talked about the cost of the roster in a relegated format, which didn't really match up because they're not a Premier League team anymore. But guess what? They're back in the Premier League now, so if that was going to pay dividends, it's not anymore.
Can I even just say with Keely, I love that she gets to have this brand new arc. She's a great character, and the fact that she's succeeded is awesome, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I don't recall seeing anything, other than when here's a good example. They have a beer in the photo, and she reminds them, like, hey, hide the drinks. It's like, God, that's a smart, savvy thing a PR person should do. Beyond that, she's just like, we're being told, like, oh, yeah, she's ultra successful. Now she gets to go be a CEO. And it's like, well, that's a cool decision, but I didn't really see the steps that
they're there
to get there.
But they're small, and you can argue not big enough. It's the same as the clues to Nate, because she arranges the prizes that we talked about that Nate didn't get.
Yeah.
She has multiple times where she's giving people advice on how to look on camera or in an interview. She's helping people get suits. She's around like almost every episode doing something small. Is that big enough to warrant the jump that she gets? That's definitely where the argument can come in.
I think what threw me off is like they talked about banter and they're like, oh, all the players are using it and all that. Did we ever see any other regular person like using it? Like it goes from, oh, we started this up, oh, and then randomly, if you just have to pay attention, it's on the jersey all of a sudden, unless you like they didn't really dive into that too much and how that worked and how that was any kind of money replacement if it was a startup and what kind of money they had. But like you never see it take off in any way other than like, hey, this worked out really well, so now Keely's really popular out of it, and like, hey, Rebecca and Sam are using it, and like that's the crutch, of their storyline. But it just all of a sudden blossoms into some huge company, and you never really have any understanding of how that happened.
Well, one of the biggest things, I'm so sorry, Dave, I just wanted to say, the biggest thing from Keely is getting that awesome Vanity Fair or whatever photo shoot. Well, that happens in the same episode. So that's what I mean about like planting seeds along the way.
Yeah, it's odd because so many shows in like, I'd say the late 90s, early 2000s padded their seasons with like episodes. They'd stretch out storylines for so long. This and make them 28 episode seasons. This one could have been really good, I think, at 20 episodes because I think they could have expanded on that. And maybe you'd have episodes where Ted isn't the focus of one, or Roy isn't in it very much, or something along those lines where maybe you focus on one topic for one episode. But I think it actually would have been beneficial to put 5 or 6 more episodes in the season to really stretch that and flesh that out.
My big question is, and I know that you already know the answer, so forget what you know. Did you get the sense, if you're just looking creatively, that they knew exactly where they were going to go this season? I would argue no, it didn't feel that way, except the last episode seemed very much like they exactly knew what happened, and so they stuffed everything in there.
That would be my counterpoint, I think they knew exactly where they were starting and finishing, but they didn't know the road.
Yes. So we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
But that was my issue.
I think that's the case for like maybe 4 characters. Like I think they wanted Roy and Keely to not be like in a comfortable situation when the season ended. They wanted Ted's, revelation of what, what's been going on with him. And they wanted Nate to be the heel of the show now. I don't know that they necessarily knew where they wanted to go with a lot of other characters. I mean, Jamie's just kind of like fallen into the background because you don't really know what to do with him anymore.
Died. He's just kind of, he's around, and I like that he fits in with the team. Like you can see them building him with like his own little redemption thing. That's nice, but he's also barely in the season.
He was also redeemed in like 3 seconds. That another issue that I had with it is.
And Sam pops up as a major character, like 5 different, 3 or 4 to 5 different storylines. It feels like he's a major thing, but they all do resolve very quickly. And it's like they want to push Sam as being one of the main characters. And I just don't feel like they pulled the trigger on that as much as they could have.
I love Sam. He is one of my favorite characters. But this is this like is indicative of the whole thing. We start the episode and they're like, Sam with a hat trick. I'm like, what? Yeah. That's a huge deal. And again, it's the telling, not showing. Like the game is over. We didn't get to see. We haven't seen his progression into a superstar player. All of a sudden he has a hat trick, which if you don't know soccer is a pretty big freaking deal. And I just was like, this is like almost silly in some ways. Like he's a great character. And like you said, they didn't maybe know exactly what they wanted to do with him besides elevate him. Yeah. The decision to elevate him was a good one. I wish they had gone about it better.
Here is something that I wonder, and we will end this. We have a ways to go yet, but when we get to the end of this, we're going to have to rate season 2 and then decide if we'd like season 1 or 2 better. I don't think that's going to be much of a competition, but we'll get there. What I wonder is, did we forgive some of this really quick storytelling in season 1 because the overarching plot was so solid and locked in from the beginning? We know what the overarching issues of season 1 are. It's Ted Lasso being a joke of a coach and trying to get the trust of his locker room. Everything in season 1 is leaning towards that endeavor, and like he's being undermined by the owner and whatever, but like all the little subplots that happen in season 1 that get resolved quickly are kind of just done so in service of that bigger plot. In season 2, all these things that seem like they might be towards the major plot, like the sponsorship, like the Sam pursuit that gets resolved in like an episode and a half, all just kind of get taken out of the equation. And because there isn't anything over them as far as like this drive through the season, do we notice the warts more?
I think so, because I think you spent the first season, you've developed all these characters, you're developing all these characters, and there's a central way you're developing them. Once you get to season 2, you kind of have to break them off. I mean, Keely and Roy are kind of on their own little side plot until Roy joins the team. They're just kind of over off there. They're not really part of the main part of the show. Mm-hmm. Sam's kind of the same way. You've developed him a little bit, but you don't have a way to like blend him into Nate and Ted and any of that. He's really off to the side with Rebecca for a lot of it. And so they've got to the point where they've developed so many people, which is a good thing, that they actually have a wide cast of people who you care about and are interested in. But I think it's really hard to tie them all back into one central kind of idea, which the first season, I mean, if the first season was the entire series, it would have been fine. Like you would have been able to basically do what you wanted to do, and you didn't have to work towards, okay, now what do we do with all these people that were mostly just in service of Ted as a coach and all that.
So one of my biggest compliments to season 1 was that it just felt good to watch. It was so much, you'd watch it, it felt good, you could have it on the background, it was easy watching while also being deep. And so I think it was easy to forgive some of those wrapped up plot lines quickly because it was easy to watch and feel good. This season was not feel good. There was a lot of emotion to it. There was definitely not feel good anymore. There's a lot of hard topics being dealt with.
Although I would argue that it was actually funnier than season 1, despite that.
It is. Yeah.
But your point is still right that there's this feeling of gloom as everybody works through these insecurities. So that part I definitely agree with.
Yeah. So I think it was easier to forgive those things, especially in a first season where you're just getting to know everybody and setting the base. It's always easier to set the base than to take it that next level. I heard a comparison that a lot of the writers said that this season was supposed to be Empire Strikes Back, basically. So following that is a bit of gloom. The idea is supposed to be things are not okay, and we're setting up this bad base to potentially redeem it all in the next episode.
It's like Empire Strikes Back if like bad fan fiction wrote.
Well, if Obi-Wan Kenobi came back to life and actually then turned himself into Darth Vader,
but then by in the first 20 minutes it was resolved.
Right, it's like Empire Strikes Back, except if it was movies 7, 8, and 9.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to answer your question, but I can't even equate I push back against the idea that they did the same thing in season 1 and were we more forgiving. I actually don't. They resolve things quickly, but it always felt earned. And I would say across the board, normally the plot lines took a little bit longer. Even if it was just 1 or 2 episodes, it was a bit more Keely and Jamie being together. So now I can't remember some of the examples I had. But they took a little bit more time. And even when it was quick, it felt really earned. Whatever interactions were there, they planted the seeds. They moved along in a way that felt believable and organic. So now they're fast and they're not believable. Maybe it's because they're trying to service so many different characters, plot lines. Like, I don't know. But there was a stark difference for me watching season 2 and season 1. I don't even want to say, like, were we more forgiving, because I don't think it's apples to apples. I think season 1 was so strong, and season 2 eventually returned to form by the end. But like Michaela said, they meandered a hell of a lot to get there.
To me, it's like the A plot in season 1 was basically Ted's struggles as a coach and everything surrounding that. And then all the B plots were resolved kind of quickly. The smaller character moments, either interpersonal stuff or one character struggles against whatever. And season 2 is like, we don't really have an A plot. Most of our B plots are resolved too quickly without any overarching success. And our C plots are even quicker and kind of thrown away and lost in the shuffle.
You could almost argue the A plot is Ted and his panic attacks.
Yeah, it is 100%.
Yeah.
But when does that actually really fully like pick up? Like, I know Dr. Sharon comes in because Danny kills the dog, but we really don't get to that for 3 or 4 episodes. And then you're like, oh, that's actually where we're going with this, is Ted not wanting to, go to counseling and all that.
And they're hinting at it throughout. I mean, you can tell even when she shows up that he's not super thrilled about it. He's not sure what her influence on the clubhouse is going to be. They plant all the seeds for that, great. And most of the stuff between Ted and Sharon all season is quite good. In the first season, we knew from the first moment of the first episode, it's this seemingly country bumpkin, completely fish out of water, coaching a sport he doesn't even understand. So everything was kind of built from that, from the word go. We didn't really understand the full scope of what Ted was going through until like episode 6.
Yeah.
Which is okay in and of itself, but if that's your main through line of the season and you don't really build to it until then, if the start of the season doesn't have other really strong B plots to help push it until then, I think that's where the weakness shows.
Especially when you're assuming going into it, the A plot is going to be dealing with relegation.
Yeah.
And look, I'm a sports fan, and I'm going to keep calling it soccer because I'm an American. And I would love to see more attention, and I'm not going to get it, right? But they need to have someone on the staff who actually knows a little bit about soccer. It feels like you don't have to go to crazy depths. I don't need to see legit soccer action, but it needs to be more.
This was one of my biggest gripes. Is in the finale they're saying after a horrid start to the season, because they had draws 8 straight times, you get points for that. That does not mean you're in last place. I understand that they wouldn't be high up the table, but that really bothered me. That I'm like, you have to stop acting like they were horrendous. They just weren't winning and getting 3 points or whatever. I can't remember how exactly it works, but that really, really bugged me. And then they dropped it for most of the season.
Yes.
And then they pop back up saying, oh, well, we made it really far in the cup and all that. And then we go back to, oh, but they're not. That does not really correlate with how the season actually works in England. And it really bugged me.
They only ever need the soccer for what they need it to be in that moment.
Yeah.
And okay, we need Beard to go off on this thing. Let's have him get crushed. And they need someone who can better weave in the soccer aspect.
And if you want to talk about money, again, we talked about it, there was a throwaway line of, oh, well, it's a lot of money that we're spending on this team when we're not in the Premier League anymore. Okay, but you never talked about that at all. About you went and signed Jamie still. You brought him back in, so you had the money for that. I'm assuming Jamie still wasn't cheap, even though in the weird world of no one wants to sign him, which was horseshit, by the way. Just the idea that no one would want to sign him is insane. But they still had money in some way, so how are they making it work?
The hard part was there's talk of relegation in the first season, how teams get broken up and it's so tough.
Yeah.
They actually added 2 players. They added Jan Moss and Jamie. Which I like Jan Moss. I thought he was a good addition to the show.
Great.
No, he was, exactly. But it's you brought another player in.
Yeah. But then the rest of the team stayed there. And not to mention, to someone who doesn't know the Premier League, I tangentially know it. I don't know much about it. I'm not an expert by any means. But the only difference in this season was the names of the teams they played. You didn't really understand what it actually meant.
They were still drawing really well. There was the crowd was still full.
Yeah, the CGI crowd looked identical to season 1, actually, and so did their loyalty. It was never wavering either.
Okay, this is a random thing.
Old couple. That one random old couple gave a 2-minute speech in the middle of one episode and then never showed up again. What the hell was that?
There's one random thing. This is completely a tangent. Those 3 guys who never go to the match in person, they just hang out at the bar and watch it, has also really bothered me. I don't know why, but they're not there.
The last one. I thought beer would get him tickets. You know?
Exactly. He let him in the stadium.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't even know if that was real or not.
You're right.
That whole episode might not even be canon for all we know. I'm
James'
serious.
sake, I hope it's not.
I think it is. I think it's meant to be. I think it's just meant to be kind of like, this is a side story, clearly, so it doesn't have a huge impact on the universe. It's possible the whole thing is a dream sequence-esque thing where it doesn't even count.
Semi-canon.
I don't know,
man. So, I mean, it sounds like I thought the show was terrible, and I didn't. I just wanted it to match season 1, and it absolutely did not until maybe the very end. But it's like, okay, we got back on track a little bit. And if this is where you wanted to go the whole time, there were much better ways to get there. But here we are at the end of season 2.
I mean, it's still, again, even it's bad or mediocre episodes are still much better than a lot of other things that are on TV, and it's helped by the cast, who's really good. So, I mean, I don't think it's like crapping all over. I think you got high expectations set from the first season, and everyone got into it, a ton, and then you just kind of see a little bit of inconsistency, and you're like, all right, you did have to kind of take a step back a little bit.
I think we tend to look at it through a very critical eye, and I think that's fine. I actually would be interested to hear some of the things you guys liked the most about this season. For me, seeing Roy's growth, or the moments Roy realized that he's been wrong for his whole life, like when Jamie told him, "I got to help my teammate," and he's obviously projecting that right onto Keely, and he just and walks away. Like, that happened twice this season with Jamie, both times, and I thought it was absolutely hilarious and just a really good sign of Roy's growth. So there were things like that. Like Chris said, I think it was the funnier season of the two.
100%. I mean, Roy's whole path on that, and then where they've left off, I actually really like that, of where he's like, okay, well, maybe I'm not really needed, and you kind of going off here, and he's super insecure about it. I've loved that. I've actually thought that was, I mean, again, it wasn't a main focus for a lot of the season. I'm probably most excited to see that in the the third season of where they're gonna go with Roy's character, because he could be very one beat of like he just cusses a lot and he's angry all the time. And they actually did give him some stuff while it was resolved at times a little quickly. They did plant all that up to where that last scene where he's all bummed out because she wants to go work and he wants to go with her and he's not going to go on vacation by himself. I thought all of that got built up really, really well. Every time he was on screen, I was pretty thrilled during the season, honestly.
I even thought, so like all the Keely developments were interesting for Roy, but also his willingness to like embrace the silly diamond dogs at the end. And even the episode with Isaac I thought was pretty well done, even though it was quick. So Roy Kent is an easy standout of the season. Nate, as much as we despise him, acted the hell out of the role this season, no question. In fact, almost all the top stars had some really emotionally resonant moments in the season. And the one thing I would point out to people who are watching this, if you haven't followed a lot of our other content, this is kind of the modus operandi for us, which is even stuff that we like, we're more critical on. Because it's not interesting to just be like, oh, we're just going to gush over the show for 50 minutes. It's more interesting to talk about what the flaws are, because then it makes the strengths shine in comparison. So there's plenty of things to like about season 2. I don't think it holds a candle to season 1.
Man, that funeral episode I loved.
Yeah.
I thought that was the strongest episode of the whole season.
100%.
And I thought it was by a lot. And let me say, the friend, I don't even know her name. I think she's
Sassy.
like quickly rising the ranks. Yeah.
She's so good.
Even though she says stinky, which really bothers me, the fact that you're an adult, stop calling people stinky. That's so dumb. Her line to Rupert about his funeral is the best writing of the whole season. Hands down. She just goes on a 2-minute monologue about like how happy she's going to be, and how she's going to be a beacon of light to the 3 people that show up to his funeral. I was like, God damn.
That was the line where I was like, oh shit, she's Dr. Cox. But there are Scrubs parallels happening here, because everybody has their styles and their formats, right? And that was the one where I was like, this is where I see Bill Lawrence writing rants a la Dr. Cox. Yeah. We don't have a character like that on the show regularly, but when she stepped in, I was like, God damn.
I do want her and her daughter on the show more, because I think they, especially when they interact with Rebecca, especially if they're going to have to shift Keely away a little bit at times and not have Keely and Rebecca together, I really want her on the show as much as possible, because I think that whole dynamic, especially when they kind of get into Rebecca being younger and growing up and all that, I've all thought, and that's what a big part of the funeral episode was, I've enjoyed a lot of that too.
Yeah. I liked the growth, a little bit of the, hey, mom's not so dumb moment when she was teaching her how to deal with Rupert.
Yeah.
Because you could see the subtle change in his face when Rebecca was nice to him, where it was like, wait a minute. Hey, it's just like what we talked about in the beginning of this episode with Sean.
Yeah.
The second I was able to tell him that you weren't getting to me anymore.
Dave kills me with kindness.
Mm-hmm. And we even had that complaint watching earlier episodes. We're like, you got to stop biting for this. Like, you can't keep falling for this every time. And then it happened on the show. So there were some times where something did pay off over the long haul. It just didn't feel like it was in the big moments. It was some of the smaller ones. And when the big moments missed, those weren't as noticeable then.
And it was like, really, I was like, where were these writers when they're doing like the interaction and the mom knows that he was cheating already and was like, when I love something, I love it forever, which was a seed that was planted earlier. And I was like, that's so good. Wow. So much better than like the spacing. Because Dave, I like the results of the spacing talk with Roy and Jamie, but I thought it was so heavy handed. Like, I was like, oh my God, this is pain. This is so cringeworthy. That episode, it was so good. I just loved everybody's interaction. I thought the writing was super solid. Every character got a good moment. Whew. Funeral episode.
Was that the one right after the beard one?
Yes.
It was.
Yeah.
Right? So once again, you see just how stark the difference was, highlighted further by separating out the actual episodes. It just hurt two of the biggest storylines of the season.
Yeah.
How much would this season have been helped had they fleshed out things a little bit more and replaced that Christmas episode with, more season-long arc stuff, and just bottle episode that Christmas episode even more and released it on December 10th. Like,
It would have helped.
That if they would have bottle episode that and released it in beginning of December right after Thanksgiving, the reception of that episode would have been off the charts, I think.
Yeah. It would have been just like a holiday special. So it would have been, a feel-good episode that clearly isn't meant to be canon. It's in between seasons. So it would have gone, oh, cool, I have a bonus episode to spend more time with these characters I like, instead of, oh, cool, I guess, but we just had what seemed like a big plot development. Shouldn't we, talk about that? No, we're just going to sing Carol? Okay. All right.
It also feel different if they weren't releasing week by week. If they dumped every episode all together, and you got to jump from that storyline that you wanted to right into it, like through the Christmas episode, I feel like you'd come away from it for the different feeling. But having to sit back for an extra week and wait on that, I think just rubs people the wrong way.
Yep.
I don't know that it would have mattered. I didn't
Maybe
even
not.
hate the Christmas episode, to be really honest with you.
Either.
No.
It wasn't like it wasn't the problem. It was maybe a symptom of it. The issue was like, Jamie's doing this new thing, cool, and you're like, no, it's resolved in one episode. And you're like, oh. All right, well, I thought you could have built that out a lot more, but let's see what else you have. And what else they had was like 6 more examples of that. Just like really quick. We don't want to waste time with actual conflict. It's like, well, no, that's actually why I'm here. So I'm watching TV. So yeah, it was not great, Dave. I think had the whole season been building towards these last 3 episodes, that would have felt really good, but they weren't. But I can at least, I think it's a better sign when a show ends where you want it to be, because then you have more hope of where it's going to go forward, rather than, it had a great start and then it petered out. Now I'm really nervous about next season.
I mean, they've built it to where, they're set pretty well for season 3 with what they're going to do and how they're going to bring back Dr. Sharon and Trent Krim, since I think I saw that both of them were supposed to be back in some way. My gut says like Trent's going to be like writing an embedded book about the team or something like that. It makes a lot of sense to just run that storyline. I don't know how Dr. Sharon fits back in, but that'll be interesting to see.
If Nate ends up back on Richmond in the first 3 episodes, I'm not even going like 1. I'll have to give him 3 episodes. If he ends up back in Richmond within 3 episodes, I might have to be off.
There's no way.
The Ted Lasso.
That's going to take the entire next season.
I cannot imagine it will be the case.
He's too entrenched.
They need Rupert to be using him as a puppet to piss everybody off
Yeah.
for a while. I mean, Rupert seemingly is going to have to be in a lot more episodes than he has been in the first 2 seasons if he's going to be Nate's boss. I mean, how often is Nate going to interact with any other character that you've seen so far other than Rupert? Right now, he's positioned where he can't, unless West Ham takes one of their players and somebody goes over and is playing for him.
Yeah, but why Jamie?
Because you can have the heel turn of the heel turn to the good to the heel turn. I don't know.
No, you can't do
interesting.
Jamie.
I don't think it'd be good though.
Boo!
Boo!
Idiot.
We thought it would be funny if it was Sam who weighs this other option for playing in Africa and then re-ups with this team and then is like, you know what, actually, fuck it, I'm going to West Ham for no reason.
I wouldn't hate if the billionaire guy came back and actually sticks with his promise of trying to make.
Oh,
Sam's
I want
miserable.
Sam Richardson more on that show.
Yeah.
I loved his character, as insane and weird as it was. I hired all these people. I just love that guy as an actor. And as soon as he popped up, I'm like, all right, I'm very invested in whatever he's going to do.
Well, and it gives you insight. Like, what would Jeff Bezos do if he really cared about soccer? It's like he would do weird shit like that, and then he would throw a tantrum when he didn't get his way.
I don't believe that billionaires should exist, but I am going to buy out an entire city block to show you how powerful I am.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was great.
But
So,
he gave a lot of people money. He gave them jobs for the day. It's great.
For the day, I guess, yeah.
well, and it's, I mean, it was great writing because if there's one way to make Sam regret the decision, it would have been, I totally respect it. We're gonna miss you. If you ever have a change of heart, you know where you're gonna have a family. And I think Sam would have been like, wow, that's really hard. And instead, it's this, and it's like, wow, I just made the greatest decision of my life.
Yeah.
I want him to come back and open a competing Nigerian restaurant right next door.
There you go. And a soccer team.
Exactly. Inside the
East
city.
Ham.
Yeah.
So scores. Cody, we do scores out of 10.
Oh, really? Out of
Just so
10?
you
I can't
know.
believe that. It's amazing.
out of 10.
Yeah, we do scores out of a fractal of 4.
Yes.
Am I starting then?
Whoever
Why
can
don't we
start.
let
Well,
Dave start?
I have one quick question before we start.
Oh.
Did any of you guys watch any of the things on Twitter in between episodes? Because they had like player interviews about games in between episodes on Twitter, and I thought they were actually pretty good.
No.
No.
I'll have to go check them out.
That sounds
You'll have
cool.
to check them out because honestly, there was one, it's 30 seconds long, about the Roy Kent effect. Might have been one of the funniest bits they did throughout the season. It wasn't even actually on the show.
Which player was it?
Roy Kent.
Okay.
It was immediately after Roy got back on as a coach, and they had won a couple of matches, and then a reporter's asking about the Roy Kent effect, and Roy's like, I don't know what the fuck the Roy Kent effect is. And so,
Yeah.
you know,
that
it
sounds
is
like
rough
Roy.
tone.
Mhm.
It's
I
worth
love all the
watching.
TV stuff, by the way. Again, it was too short. It lasted like barely any time, but I felt bad for the main host. He was like, I miss Roy at the end. I was like, man, this poor guy. He's been through the ringer. Yeah, so Dave, why don't you go ahead and start us off on the score?
Okay. As you've already mentioned, this season obviously didn't carry the same weight, the same adoration as the first one. I mean, I'm glad the first one came first in a sense, so that it had that solid base to build on, because I kind of have that trust in the writers to continue something and make it better in the end. I'm sad that one of the best jokes of the season of Arlo White and Ken, what's the other guy? Chris, can't remember the other commentators. Arlo White and Chris something, where Chris is like, only if you think time is linear, Arlo. And Arlo looks at him and goes, yes, I do.
I do,
Yeah.
actually. In fact, yeah. That's,
That was one of the better jokes of the season. It came in the very end. Anyway, after the ride that we went on, feeling disjointed, feeling like there was starts and stops and jumpiness, unresolved plot lines, it still was an interesting watch. I still am very invested in these characters. I'm still intrigued and excited for season 3. So I'm not going to dock it too much. I think I gave season 1 a 9. I think I'm going to put this at a 7.5, I think.
okay. All right. I'll go. So if I was rating just the last 3 episodes, I would probably go like 9.5. I thought they were excellent, each one. Unfortunately, the first few episodes and all the plot threads were more like a 5.5 to a 6. I really didn't think it was great, but I can't, like you said, Dave, dock it too much because it was always enjoyable. I never was like, man, I wish I get that hour of my life back, which does happen sometimes. I always enjoyed it. It was something that we all watch, and it was funny and heartwarming still. I would say probably a solid 7. I'm giving a lot of credit for how it righted the ship there at the end. And like you said, I am excited for where they're going for season 3 now for sure.
The tricky part of scoring this is to score it on its merits and not on disappointment relative to expectations.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was relative to expectations, I loved season 1. Did I give it the 9.5 or did Dave give it the 9.5? We were both up there. Don't remember. We'll have to make Cody score both when his turn comes up.
We'll have to
'cause he
make
wasn't
Cody
here.
check the tape.
Yes, check the tape right now, bitch. Anyways, I don't want to score it versus expectations because it was something of a letdown until the last 3 or 4 episodes. Because I even thought the one before the funeral, not the head trip one, but the the Man City one, was also decent. I thought it was like, all right, we're heading in the right direction. I think I'm settling on a 7. I think I'm closer to where Sean is than Dave, although there's not much difference in the two, just because, I mean, earlier in the season, we had an episode where we talked about we wanted people to be patient and actually see how things resolve before judging, because we didn't know if they were going to actually come around on these things. Well, the majority of the plot lines that people had problems with at that time were never resolved. That's unfortunate. They kind of either just faded away or they were forgotten completely. So it's hard for me to go any higher than that, despite I think what Season 3 is going to represent as far as a return to form, because I had to judge this season solely on its merit outside of Season 1, and because of that, I don't think it was great from start to finish. I enjoyed most of it, even the episodes that were so I'm settling on a 7.
Now it's your turn, Cody.
So I have to grade Season 1.
No,
I would probably
Season 1 first.
Oh,
then
why
Season 2.
don't you know what? You didn't do that. Do a very quick Season 1.
It was like a 9. I mean,
Okay.
just easy enough. It's
You're
one of
very in line with
that-
most of us.
yeah. That first season is one of my favorite seasons of TV I think I've seen in
You've
a
watched
long,
it like
long time.
4 times now.
I've rewatched that first season a ton, considering I watched it by myself very, very quickly. Watched it again overall, with you guys. I think I'm pretty in line with Dave. I would say about a 7.5 for the season. I think what I remember reading after the first season was they kind of had Sudeikis had said they think it's going to be like a 3-season show, and so if that idea is it is like a trilogy of kind of rise / fall at the very end, and then they're kind of trying to have a fall with somebody else or with Nate. If this is going to be the last season going into it, I do think we're positioned very well for it being just 10, or I think 12 more episodes is what they've ordered. And on top of that, they know it's 12. It's not 10 and then create 2 bullshit episodes to throw in there.
Yeah.
It's actually going to be 12. So I think my expectations are actually higher for the third season than they were going into the second one, knowing maybe the middle season is going to do some work that I'm not going to love because they have a real long plan for it. So I think it's a 7.5, but again, I could change that grade based on what I see going into the third season, if that's the last one. Now, if they keep going forward, then this is just going to be a season that maybe never really fits with the other ones if it's better.
Yeah.
But if it's a 3-season show and that's it, I think I can look back on the second season and embrace it a little bit more, especially if they decide to just go back to some of those storylines that maybe they blew off because, I don't know, pandemic was crazy and filming in it was crazy and there's a lot of weird challenges you had to face. Maybe that's a little bit more righted going forward.
Well, and you bring up a good point. I am more excited for Season 3 than I was going into Season 2, even though that was coming off of this excellent first season.
Exactly.
I have a much better idea of where they're going now, and it's really exciting.
Because like at the end of the first season, cool, that really wrapped up, and you had no clue
Exactly
what the next plot line was going to be. We actually have 2 or 3 solid plot lines sitting and waiting to be revisited, to where I cannot wait for that first episode. I was like, okay, cool, Ted Lasso's back. Let's see how we're going to do it. And then, of course, the first couple episodes, we're like, okay, well, you really haven't told me what you're doing yet.
Exactly.
I mean, the question you have to ask, I think, is what character is in better shape coming into Season 3 than they were coming into Season 2? Jamie?
Keely. In the sense
In
of,
a way,
in
yeah.
a
but
way.
the Roy stuff is iffy.
Yeah.
And people have progressed in some ways. Like, Roy has made a lot of advancements, but he's in a moment where he's like, kind of like fucked up right now. He's not
100%.
sure what's going on. We know Ted has all these unresolved issues with his marriage, with his son, with his panic attacks, whatever. Like, you can list character by character, and almost all of them are in a rockier position than they were at the end of Season 1.
Sam's only in a better spot because he's a more prominent character.
But he doesn't know what's happening with Rebecca.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But as he pointed out at the very end, through Ted, basically saying, like, I'm not going to let you dictate that anymore. I'm not going to let my feelings for you dictate what I do.
Another thing of like, oh, what did you let it dictate for 2 weeks of your life? Like, that was also a line where I was like, all right, I get your point here, but that's also was a very quick resolve.
I hope to see more of that. Like, so when, and again, this is all it takes sometimes. When I'm talking about planting the seeds, Sam looks at the people playing when he's conflicted, and he sees his jersey, and I got a sense of he feels like he has a better opportunity to make a difference playing for Richmond, as a role model or whatever it was. And I was like, just little scenes like that plant such a big seed. That's all I need. And so seeing that in the finale, I have much greater hopes about Season 3 and how they're going to go about it.
They better let him wear number 10 next season, though. I don't know
Yeah,
how
I
many
thought
people
that
know
was
that that's a
funny.
soccer thing and it's important, but
Did-
there was a reason behind the number 10 on that jersey.
That's why he was so
in that
happy
box.
when he opened
It's
it.
very meaningful to wear number 10 as a striker.
Why is that?
Cool. Yeah, why
Why
is
is
that?
I don't know the
Pele?
whole
Did
I don't
Pele
know the
wear
whole
10?
I don't know the whole history, and I don't want to get it wrong and have people tell me I'm an idiot. But I just know that in soccer history, being the number like the 10th guy and how they number positions and all that type of stuff, it's really important to be the top striker and wear number 10.
Interesting.
I looked at that thinking like, wow, they got his number wrong. What an idiot billionaire.
And why is he so happy about
So
that? What's happening?
my hope is that they will, and again, that's relying on people to know that, which for sure that doesn't do a lot of soccer talk. It's kind of interesting that they thought you would all know that.
Yeah.
I do hope they switch his number, just because I think that's a meaningful thing.
Cool.
I like it.
Well, there we go.
I like
Ted
it.
Lasso.
Yep. Season 2. We'll see season 3 in what, a year? I don't know. Do we
August.
have August.
I think it's
August?
August or July.
So
Oh,
9 months
Next year.
ish. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got a ways to go, but I don't have a bad taste in my mouth coming out of this, and that's I think our scores reflect that. It's just kind of like,
What-
like you said, season 1 was so stellar that I almost don't think they could help but take a step back unless they just nailed everything to perfection.
What I'm going to be interested in is I think I want to go back and rewatch all of them again with the knowledge I have now and see if other things stand out in the way that they wouldn't have. Because I got to
Yeah.
review season 1 after watching it 4 times, which I
Yeah.
could really digest everything.
Well, one
So-
thing that comes to mind for me, not to belabor this too much longer, but like Nate's kind of an asshole even during his triumphant moments in season 1.
Yeah,
It's not like he's this nice guy all of a sudden. The biggest moment he has in season 1 is him ripping the other team people to shreds. So
His-
like
his
these scenes are
roast.
there even back in season 1. It's not like all of a sudden he all went to the dark side, but I'm sure there's probably a few more things like that I'm not thinking of that might be interesting on a rewatch. Alrighty, that's the end of this episode. Next week we have our Suns season preview because, we're about to embark on what will hopefully be another good season. I don't know about finals, but we'll talk about all that when we get there. Lots to go over for that, even though the team hasn't changed a ton. There's still plenty to talk about, especially when we factor in other stuff like Kyrie, Ben Simmons, et cetera, et cetera. So
I know Cody's super excited to talk Suns next week.
yeah, we'll see if
What?
I'm here.
yeah, maybe he'll not be here. Who
Maybe I
knows?
won't be here. Maybe I'll just pick a new Western Conference team since I cheer for nobody, just to spite you all.
Well,
That's
you can.
fine.
There's about 9 or 10 of them you can pick that
Just
we
pick
won't
one.
care about. You pick the Clippers, you're not going to be allowed back in the house.
Maybe that's what I'll do. I'm from Southern
You can
California.
pick the-
Maybe I need to be a Clipper fan.
You can pick the Sacramento Kings. How about that?
There you go.
they're
You
fun.
can have the Kings.
Which might end up with Ben Simmons.
I'll pass on both of those things.
He's a young socialite. He'll love it in Sacramento. All right, anyways, until next episode, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com or at youtube.com/objectionnetwork for new videos 7 days a week. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next time.